Hello everyone. Today we will study the structure of an atom. Now we know that the universe is made up of two basic things, matter and energy. And the fundamental unit of matter is an atom. Now we see different things in nature. For example, there's an iron rod, there's a gold coin. So these two substances are made up of two different elements. So the question is that the atoms of these different elements, are they different? And if yes, then how? And the second question that arises in our minds should be that, okay, the fundamental unit of matter is an atom. But is an atom further divisible or not? So to answer these two basic questions, we need to know the structure of an atom and the properties. So in 18th to 20th century, scientists had worked upon this area and they made a few discoveries. In 1886, E. Goldstein discovered the positively charged rays, which were called the canal rays. And these canal rays gave rise to the discovery of proton, which is a positively charged element denoted with P+. Then 14 years later, J.J. Thomson discovered a negatively charged element called electron. This is denoted as E with a negative sign. And then in 1932, J. Chadwick discovered a neutral element called the neutron, which is denoted by an N. So these are the three basic elements that are present in an atom. Further adding to this, we know that a proton is positively charged and an electron is negatively charged. The charges of both is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. In case of protons, one proton has this positive charge and one electron has a negative charge. 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. And neutron, being neutral, carries no charge. It was also discovered by various experiments that the mass of one proton was found out to be 1.672 in 10 to power minus 24 grams. Whereas in case of electron, it was 9.1 into 10 to the power minus 31 kg. And for one neutron, it was 1.674 into 10 to the power minus 24 grams. So if you pay attention to here, the mass of one proton was 2000 times the mass of one electron. So in general, when we do computations and all, we consider the charge of one proton as +1 and we consider the charge of one electron as -1. The mass of one proton is taken to be 1 unit, whereas the mass of electron is considered to be negligible. And also the mass of neutron is almost similar to the mass of proton. So they are both taken as 1 units. Whereas in case of electrons, we do not consider the mass because it's almost negligible. So in the beginning of 20th century, it was known that the proton and electron exist. That means an atom is made up of protons and electrons, where protons are deep inside the atom and electrons are present superficially. But the exact structure was not known. So the scientists started working upon them and they tried to figure out that what is the structure of an atom, and the neutron was discovered much later. So we will be studying the structure of an atom that was proposed by firstly J.J. Thomson, then we have Rutherford's model, and finally we have Niels Bohr's model. So let's move to that. Now we will study the structures proposed by different scientists. Firstly, we have the J.J. Thomson model. J.J. Thomson suggested that the atom consists of a sphere of positive charge with negatively charged electrons embedded into it. And the positive negative charges in an atom are equal in magnitude, which makes the atom electrically neutral. So what he basically meant was that the structure of an atom is similar to that of a pudding, or we can say a watermelon. For example, in the watermelon, you have this reddish structure and in that, the seeds are embedded into it. Similarly, in the structure of an atom, there is a sphere of positive charge and the electrons, the negative charges, are embedded into the sphere. The drawback of his model was that he couldn't explain the results of experiments that were carried out by the other scientists in the upcoming years. Next, we have Rutherford's model. Now, Rutherford's model was based on his alpha particle scattering experiment. So first we will study what was that. So in this experiment, fast-moving alpha particles were made to fall on a thin gold foil. Let's see that what motivated him to take up the gold foil and the alpha particles. So gold foil was selected because he wanted as thin layer as possible, and we already know that gold is highly malleable. And alpha particles are doubly charged helium ions, and since they have a mass of 4 units, therefore the fast moving alpha particles have considerable amount of energy. So he wanted particles which had considerable amount of energy. For that reason, alpha particles were chosen. Now he expected small deflections by the positive charge in the atom. See, the alpha particles are also doubly charged positive ions, right? And in the atom, we know that J.J. Thomson suggested that the atom is a positive sphere and the negative charges are embedded into it. So he expected that these positive ions would get deflected by that positive sphere. Because alpha particles are much heavier, so he expected that the deflection would not be that large, it would be small. Let's see what he observed. He observed that most of the fast-moving alpha particles pass straight right through the foil. See, you can see here that these are alpha particles which are being bombarded on the thin gold foil, and most of the particles are going straight without getting deflected from their paths. So, with this observation, he concluded that most of the space inside the atom is empty, wherein J.J. Thomson said that there's a positive sphere and the electrons are embedded. But here he could see that since most of the particles are going straight and they're not getting deflected, that means most of the space inside the atom is empty. Second observation was that some of the alpha particles were deflected by the foil by small angles. So he concluded that the positive charge occupies very little space inside the atom, because alpha particles are doubly charged helium ions, that means they are positive ions. So for their deflection, there had to be positive charge. And since they were getting deflected by small angles, so he concluded that the positive charge occupies very little space, which is exactly the opposite of J.J. Thomson's model. And also, 1 out of every 12,000 particles appeared to rebound. See, what is the meaning of rebound? Rebound means retracing the path. That means the alpha particle went straight and then after hitting something, it came back along the same path. So that suggested that all the positive charge and the mass of an atom, they were concentrated in a very small volume within the atom, because only 1 out of 12,000 particles rebounded. That means only 1 out of those 12,000 particles retraced their path and they came back along the same trajectory. So based on this, Rutherford suggested his model in 1911. He gave the following description. He said, there's a positively charged center in an atom, which is called the nucleus, and nearly all the mass of an atom resides inside the nucleus. He said the electrons revolve around the nucleus in circular paths. The size of the nucleus is very small as compared to the size of the atom. So here you can see that the nucleus is the central part of the atom and there are different orbits in which electrons keep revolving. Now let's see that what was the drawback of Rutherford's model, which is extremely important. Rutherford's model couldn't explain the stability of an atom. Let's see how. According to the electromagnetic theory of physics, if a charged particle undergoes accelerated motion, then it must radiate or lose energy continuously. Now see, Rutherford said that there is a nucleus in the center and the electrons are revolving. So when a particle or anything undergoes a circular motion, it is under constant acceleration. So because of that acceleration, according to the theory, the electron should radiate and lose energy. And if the electron is losing energy, then obviously its speed will keep decreasing and it will be strongly attracted by the oppositely charged nucleus, which means that it should eventually fall into the nucleus and it should take a spiral path for that. So this would make the atom extremely unstable and hence the atom should collapse. So here we can see in this figure, Rutherford's model couldn't explain this fact that since the electrons are revolving around the nucleus, that means it would be radiating energy. If it's radiating energy, its speed would decrease and it would eventually fall inside the nucleus, making the atom extremely unstable. So then we had Bohr's model. Bohr came up with two postulates which clarified that why atom is stable within this model. So he said that there are only certain orbits which are known as discrete orbits of electrons, and they are allowed inside the atom. And also, while revolving in these discrete orbits, the electrons do not radiate energy. That means they are not losing their energy while they are revolving in these special orbits. You can see here, he suggested that, okay, this is the nucleus, the positively charged center. There are orbits around the nucleus in which the electrons revolve, and they have different energy levels. If you see the innermost orbit, it has a different energy level, and the outermost would have a different energy level. We can see here the orbits are usually named as K, L, M, and so on, or if you're given them numbering, so it is called 1, 2, 3, 4. And these orbits are also called shells. So it is K shell, L shell, M shell, N shell, and so on. So based upon all of these theories and the final conclusions that were given by Niels Bohr, we have the final structure of atom. Let's see what was that. The atom is made up of three particles: electrons, protons, and neutrons. Remember that Niels Bohr gave his model in 1930. By that time, it was not known that neutrons exist. The discovery of neutron was in 1932. So this final structure that we are studying is based upon accommodating the discovery of neutron. So the protons and the neutrons, they are located in a small nucleus at the center of the atom. Here you can see the nucleus. The final structure says that in this nucleus we have protons and neutrons. The electrons revolve rapidly around the nucleus in fixed circular paths, which are called energy levels or shells. See here, we have different energy levels, the orbits, the K, L, M, N. These are all energy levels, energy shells or orbits, whatever you wish to call. There is a limit to the number of electrons which each energy level can hold. Now this is important. In each energy level, there's a limit that a particular shell can hold. For example, if we talk about the K shell, the limit is 2 electrons. It cannot hold more than 2 electrons. For L, it's 8 and moving further so on. For N, it's 32. Next, we have that each energy level is associated with a fixed amount of energy. That means if we are talking about K shell, the amount of energy in K shell for the electrons is different from that of the electrons in L shell. And there is no change in the energy of electrons as long as they keep moving in the same level. That means if we have electrons which are revolving in K shell, their energy will be constant and it will not change. And this makes the atom stable. So we have the structure of an atom based upon the theories suggested by J.J. Thomson, Rutherford, and Niels Bohr. I hope you understood the concept. Thank you.